Good evening, everybody. I suspect this will be like a normal live stream where nobody comes. It's just me talking to the camera. And I'm here for it. Happy Sunday night. It is Sunday, February 20th. This is going to be the last live stream of February because I'm going to take next week off to relax a little. And I will be back in March after a brief writing retreat that I'm going on with a friend to work on a somewhat secret project that we are cooking up together as a co-writing opportunity, but uh, maybe I'll share more about that in March. So tonight I am continuing to work on Modern Persuasion. I'll catch you up for a few minutes, then we'll do maybe 3 or 4 sprints depending on how much I talk, and I'll share what's being worked on and what's going to happen in March when I do my next live stream. So, where am I? I got quite a bit done this week. I am officially in the second half of the second act. This is when Frederick and Emma are in Cape Cod. He has surprised her after the Chicago adventure ended. I fleshed out a lot of that content, got more into the her work conflict coming to a head because this is her journey much more than his journey is only to really impact her journey. So I needed more work done on the crisis she was having at her job and with her family. The Cape Cod stuff is where the family things begin to come to a head, but there's still a little more work to be done around the job. I have decided to break up some of the chapters. Two of the chapters, the LA scene and the Chicago scene, were super long and were a slog to get through. And I realized I needed to break them up significantly more so that the reader can digest them, especially because the previous chapters and the subsequent chapters are not as long. And even though some of these do seem to be longer than I realized, I might break them up more as well. But I'll decide that on my end as I go. I also made a decision about the text messages. If you ever saw previous editions, you'll know that there are a couple scenes with actual text message images because I thought that would be very clever. And it was, but it makes it very difficult to edit them because then you have to go and I had to find something I used a couple years ago to see if I can recreate that. It really isn't worth it. So I'm going to change them to text, which will also make it easier to differentiate who is the screen talker, who's on the right, who's on the left, and if I need to edit things as I go, or again, I can easily do that. Is it as immersive for the reader? No, obviously not. But immersive versus easier to figure out what's going on is now a concession I have to make and have made. So, some of what I will be doing today is probably copying those text messages. A few I might just leave in depending on the flow of how I'm working. But I already started making this change, and it will also be a lot easier for formatting, creating a Kindle document, and an ebook for the other formats. If I make that, it'll just be easier for everybody, I think, if we deal with text messages. So that's where things have gone this week. I started working today on this next chapter. I don't remember if I'm in 16 or 15 or 17 or farther along, but I am in the upper teens, and this is the Cape Cod content, which you can see how far down the cursor is. Um, you can see that the cursor is not as far down as it should be for chapter 16. I'm a third, 2/3 of the away done, and I'm in the last few chapters. So this signals to me that the next check might be long. Um, but it's also possible that this isn't just the text of the book. There's very likely the back matter, which is um, the bio, the thank yous, the blurb for the next book, a short story possibly um, from the short story collection, maybe even the first chapter of Phi Alpha Pi, and that's fine. But it just feels like there's a huge chunk coming up, and I do know what is actually coming up. So, uh, yeah, this might not be done by the end of this weekend, which is technically in a few hours. I do have tomorrow off. I am hoping to get some work done on it. I'd like for this to be like off the table so that I can focus on finding someone who will read and proofread it to make sure the flow is right. And that's going to take a little more time just because, those things are last minute decisions. So, tonight I'm going to start by finishing up the chapter I'm working on. I'm pretty sure I'm almost done with, at the very least, the scene, which would be the end of a chapter as I am changing things around. There seems to be this is where Emma has realized she's somehow managed to get drunk at dinner, even though she has nursed a beer all night. The reader does not know what is going on because Emma does not know what is going on. But in Frederick's chapter, which is huge, this might be the huge chunk coming up. In Frederick's explanation chapter, he tells her what has happened this night. But at this point, all she knows is that she is in fact drunk. She has said something that she would only say because she is drunk, and now she is walking home with him, and Dave, the Frederick's competition, has come out to pick her up and to get her home safely because Frederick doesn't have a car. So that's where we're going to start. I'm going to work on 10 minutes, and from there we will talk about what's going on next. turned off the wrong tab. So I I didn't end the chapter there. Clearly, I went on to her confrontation with Karen, which I think needs to be the start of another chapter. This ending of she has this outburst at dinner after somehow getting drunk, uh, and she walks home, but Frederick puts her in a car that Dave comes up as, and she doesn't really protest. But when she gets home, eventually her father brings her two nephews back, people assuming she'll take care of them when they're having a meltdown. So nothing really has changed from her perspective. She had this outburst and everything was ignored. So she's incredibly frustrated. But because she's Emma, she takes care of everybody. And now she is woken up the next morning. She is with Karen, and there's some confrontations that have to happen. And I made some notes to myself, and now I've lost them. They are now out of reach. But I made some notes to myself last week about what is Emma's plan to take charge. She has this epiphany in Chicago. She does what she needs to do. Well, she has this epiphany in Los Angeles. By the time they get to Chicago, she's ready to put it in action. She talks to Louisa. She lets Louisa know how helpful she has been and how she wants to make sure she has a job when this internship is over. And is that what Louisa wants? And she says yes. And Emma says to Louisa, okay, this is what I need for you to do to help us get through this tour. She does not tell Louisa anything about her history with Frederick, though she does then, when they get into New York, tell Christy a portion of the truth because she has been edited. She finds out that when Christy, who was the publisher, the editor that worked with Frederick, saw his draft, it had Emma's original editing notes on it, which is why everybody knew Emma had edited it. And so everybody's pissed at her because she passed on it, but it looks like she edited it. So she tells Christy that they knew each other in college. She and Frederick knew each other in college, and she happened to edit it. She did not tell Christy about their personal relationship. Just, I am so sorry this has happened. I never intended this to be this way. Please understand. I don't, whatever it is that she wanted. But now she has to confront Karen. And Karen's a little more nefarious than she has come to believe, and probably a little more nefarious than the character's counterpart in Persuasion, because Karen is not just Emma's mentor and Emma's mother's best friend, and she is Emma's boss. And technically, she can have IT break into Emma's email, which is what she has had done, so that somebody was watching Emma's email, essentially, saw Frederick's agent's email come in, saw the contents of the email, and circumvented Emma. This is why people are actually asking for contractual confirmation that Emma will be their editor. Frederick's agent has started telling people that Emma passed on it, but not that Emma passed on it. Emma had someone else pass on it for her, even though she had seen all her notes in the rumor has gotten on that even though someone has wanted to work with Emma, they have been assigned to another editor and another publishing team within the publishing house. So these are why rumors are getting around. This is why this weirdness is happening. And she learned most of this from her conversation in LA with Ted, who has offered her a job, which she is now seriously considering. But she is not making the decision because she needs to get a hold of things professionally. But also, she doesn't think Frederick wants her there. And she's really torn because she's realized she likes the people she'd probably be around in LA. She liked LA. She had a good job offer, something where she could be free to do the work she wants to do the way she wants to do it. And but here he is. The reason she didn't go with him is now the reason she wants to stay, and the reason she would have stayed with him, that she loves him. He no longer seems to love her, though every hint is that he clearly does. There's nothing wrong between the two of them, except that they're idiots who won't communicate with each other, which is 99% of humans' problems. So we don't actually talk to each other, but neither here nor there. What I am going to finish up next is I don't know where we are anymore. I think the next chunk in the scene is the barbecue on the well, no, it's on the fireworks on the beach for the 4th of July or something, and then there might be a new chapter. Oh god, I hope there's a new chapter soon. I hope we don't follow I hope I wasn't the idiot who followed this through all the way to Frederick's scene, but I think I did. I really think I did. Oh, anyway, we're gonna do 10 more minutes, and then see where things are. All right, 10 minutes in, and clearly this is going to go on for the rest of my night. If I get through this chapter by the end of this stream, I'll be quite surprised because for fuck's sake, Sarah. Sarah from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, what was I thinking? Literally, no, Sarah from 5 years ago. What was I thinking with these chapters? Yeah, that would have been a beautiful place to end at the end of the previous section, with Emma realizing Karen had given her everything she had needed to know, and she now had a decision to make on her own. Um, I suspect the big change that will come is before Emma reads Frederick's draft, and I'm a draft because it really is a very rough, cathartic journal style version of what was going on. She will decide that she's going to take this job and move to LA, and now has to communicate with him that they will probably see each other regularly because she and Patrick are now besties. And she and Sammy are now besties, so Frederick's probably going to interact with her plenty of times. But we know that they get their happily ever after. So yes, they're going to see each other every day at this point. Um, I'm going to lighten up Dave a little. That's one of my next steps. He is I think I forgot at some point that he had grown up on this beach in this neighborhood with these girls, these now women, and that he should know a Kennedy didn't ever show up. I'm probably gonna make him a little less predatory-ish and a little more in a bad situation. I don't really like in normal day-to-day stories where you're not dealing with like the big bad, even in the big bad, even in the evil, there is motivation, there is reason. And Dave's problem is he's not an asshole. He's in a really bad situation. His family can't afford the house he's living in. That they own. They'd very much like to keep it, and he's trying to figure out a way to keep it. And he doesn't hate Elizabeth. He doesn't hate Emma. He could live a life with them. And a lot of people do settle for someone they aren't in love with, but do like and could learn to love because sometimes there are other priorities in life. And Dave's trying to make that hard decision. The question is, which one does he pick, Emma or Elizabeth? And yet again, he has swooped in and picked Emma. And Elizabeth knows it. Elizabeth knows a little more than she is sharing, and she is super not happy with Emma, which describes the bulk of their relationship. She has not been very happy with Emma for a very long time, but this is not the Elizabeth Emma story. This is not their story as sisters. Maybe that's going to be some other day. I'm sure I could figure out a short story where they have the meltdown, or Elizabeth has the meltdown that's been brewing for years between the two of them. So, and Elizabeth has a lot of valid reasons to be pissed at her sister. Emma is not the saint. We're just dealing with Emma's point of view. So, Um, before I get into actually, let's just do one more sprint and I will wrap up from there and talk about what will be coming up in March because there's lots of fun stuff coming up soon. So, 10 more minutes. All right. I still got us in the same freaking chapter. But it is almost 8 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up. So where do things stand? I still think I can finish this by the end of the month, maybe even by the end of tomorrow if I give it a little more attention tonight. This chapter is clearly going to be split into probably 3 smaller chapters. I have to think about that a little more, but um where we left off, I think the whole conversation with Karen, I don't know if that should be one chapter with the barbecue the previous night, um or if it should be on its own. There might be a little more room to flesh this out. I don't know just yet, but I feel like this chapter, right, this section right here on the beach, uh, her instinct to tell Frederick what's been going on and then pulling back because Dave is interrupted. There's a little more here that I have to think about, but I really feel like there's some sort of break that's needed in this chapter. Like a lot is building up, and I need a little bit of a break. But I want to see how long this chapter continues to go on for before I actually make that decision, because I think there's still another like chunk where they go to the craft shop and we really do end with Frederick's um chapter, which is not the best place for us to end. So I need to think about that. But that's I'm going to take this computer downstairs and keep working while I watch repeats of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is what I've been watching for the past week. Um it's reminded me that not all love stories need to be difficult and fraught, and you can have the Jake and Amy's plot of their relationship just being super easy and them getting each other. Uh, I want to write that someday. I want to write that ease in a relationship someday. I have some ideas. Anyway, that's not important. So what's coming up? I will not be doing a live stream next week. I'm going to take the week off, probably because I'm going to be exhausted, mostly just because I am exhausted now. And if I do press through and work a lot during the evenings of the week, I will probably be tired from writing this, and I want this done before the end of the month so that I can consider how quickly I want to re-release it next month. The cover is done. This is the only task on my plate, and I really want the 28th to be my last day in this draft. The decisions will be made, and if someone's going to read it before I publish it, that's set up. Um so what comes in March? The first weekend in March, a friend and I are going on a retreat to primarily work on a secret project, but I have no, 4 tasks on my plate otherwise. The first is going to be um, working on edits that have come back from my editor for 2 books, for New Devil and Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse. I'm going to start the month with the New Devil because those edits have to be made like this. And I'm debating now if I'm going to need beta readers. I might want beta readers only because I do want a little more feedback from readers. And I think that that will be helpful. But because this is getting a developmental edit, which means the editor is looking at the development of a story in a way a beta reader might, I think it might be smart to skip it, especially if I want to stick to my time frame. And my little strategic brain has to think timeline based on the feedback that comes back from Samantha, the editor. The second half of the month is going to be spent working on Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse. This is coming back from the line slash low developmental edit. This means there will be expansions in certain places. A lot of my time is going to be spent just running through and accepting grammatical and line changes that she just makes because it's a draft and that's the way this works. Um, I can take that work into April a little because this book probably won't be published until mid-May. And oh my God, we're at the end of February. I have 3 months, 2.5 months left before that happens. Woo! The cover of that is in development. We've done 2 passes. Having a difficult time because I want it to really match up with the Modern Persuasion feel, and they have some elements that match, but not enough to make me feel comfortable. But that's a story for the Patreon people. Um, I think, that that's gonna be ready for me. I really think that that's ready to go, and I'm in a headspace this month that is very different from all Februarys before it, thanks to some work that I am doing to myself and my mental boundaries. Um, so that's task 1 of March. Task 2 of March is to start rereading Pemberley Candies, which is being changed to Sweeten Up, Ginny Darcy, and, I have to read through that draft, think about the plot I've redesigned for it, and readjust the flow and the scenes that are there to decide how I want it organized and plotted for the next draft. That will be my second half of the year. That will end up going to Patreon collaborators probably around September. We will be working on short stories between then and now, and the marketing of Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse and promotional for all the Austen books. We're looking at the holistic series, not just individual books for a few months. Um, we'll talk more about that next month. Uh, task 3 is to plot the next book in that series after Pemberley Candy's Sweeten Up Ginny Darcy, and that will be Citation Needed, the next Persuasion modernization, which will follow Penny from this book into her past and her second chance at love. She and Emma have so much in common, except in that version, Penny is going to be our Wentworth instead of the male Wentworth. So we're doing a gender swap and the opposite point of view. And I need to do the first round of character development and plotting for that because that's this year's NaNoWriMo project, and I sort of want to start wrapping my head around it. Then I'm going to start working on the next Frozen Wasteland book, which will be focused on fake gurus who scam you by running classes and they want to be your everything. We're leading up to a cult if you've ever read that book, and I'm sure that anyone who's watching the Modern Persuasion live stream does not really care about that series because it's a totally different genre. But I will add that I'm changing the marketing to from horror to dark fantasy. I did some test runs of this past week and it went very well, and I think that this might be the best way to talk to readers about it that will pique their interest because it is still a bit dark fantasy and a bit horror, and there's sort of a fine line between the two. So we're going to see how things react and change because of that. There's a lot of work to do. That will probably be a summer project. And if I can get through all of that in a month, which is highly unlikely, but maybe, I am going to start looking at the Enduring series. I am setting everything up so that I can plot it next winter. After NaNoWriMo, I can start plotting the first book in that series, or the second book in that series, the first book in the main series. Um, the Help Wanted New Devil will become sort of a prequel, freebie giveaway, uh, lead into the universe. Ooh, excuse me. It's the end of the night, and then we'll take it from there. So it is now 8 o'clock. Have a great next 2 weeks, and I will see you in March. And remember, if you're watching this in the replay, like, subscribe, ring that bell for notification, the YouTube stuff, and I'll see you next month. Bye.